Hey.
Hello. All right, we're gonna try it now. See how this all goes.
The other one, I think I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves. So we should make a little announcement that this is how we have it set up. You'll be the only one they'll be seeing on the screen. I'm going to ask you to mute yourself until the points in the presentation.
Okay, I'm gonna make you. Oh, can I make you co-host? Does that work if I make you co-host?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna make you co-host. I'm nervous. I've been practicing. I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous. The other one, let me just say, I'm going to check out probably a little bit before 7. I've got another meeting I'm going to, a physical one, so I got to get over to a meeting for 7:30.
Okay, thank you for doing this with me, Paul. It's awesome.
All right, the candles look good.
Everything look good, you think?
Yeah, except for that ugly plant.
Ugly plant? How about the little angel sitting next to it?
Angel is okay. I'd pass on the ugly plant, that's all.
Are you giving her a bad time, Paul?
Never.
It's a good looking plant. Are you kidding me? That's one of my most healthy plants of all.
Let me say, if I had a plant, if I was taking care of Claudia's plant, it looked like that, I'd be in trouble.
Really?
Beautiful. That's what I meant. Beautiful.
Hang on a second here.
Oh, there's Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
You're not supposed to see me. Nancy Neff.
Oh, I thought, thank you. Take it back, re-roll.
Just a couple of quick announcements. We're trying something new this time. So we have this set up. So Jackie is going to be highlighted and spotlighted, and you should all be seeing her big screen on your computers or devices. Is that where you're at?
Yep, for me, it is.
Okay. And then the second one is that when she puts screens up to share, she'll be on one side and the document's going to be on the other side. And if you put your cursor between those two boxes, there's a line and you can make one side bigger and one side smaller. Maybe you want to try,
I'll put one up. I'll put one up right now so you can test it out. Okay. So we're going to be starting with, let me see, what am I starting with here? I want to start with, let's start with this one. So we might as well start with that one. See how it works for you.
Froze.
All right, now I'm not supposed to have you guys on the side here. What did we do that I didn't have you here, Paul?
You up on the top view. What did we do?
There we go. I did it.
Okay.
Okay, so now see how that works.
Else, you see the little double line between the picture and the diagram?
Not on my computer.
There's a little tiny, if you put your cursor right between her shared screen and her picture, a line lights up.
We don't see a large picture, Paul. We don't see her picture at the same size as the shared screen.
Do you see me as a small picture?
Oh yeah, but thanks, Paul. Yeah, I see what you can do.
So there should be my picture's little. My picture's little.
Yeah.
Next to the share screen, and if you look, there's a line right between my picture and the share screen. So you can make me smaller, or you can make and the share screen bigger, or you can make the share screen smaller and make me bigger.
It doesn't work on my computer.
It works on mine. Yeah,
doesn't work on mine.
It worked on mine. Yeah.
If you
Rosemary.
Number 4 is.
Diane, if you put your cursor right in that space between the two, her picture and the thing, a line doesn't light up, like pop up.
No.
Okay.
Can you see? You know what? What can you see? Are you in gallery view? What view are you in, Diane? For seeing people's faces?
Now you're asking the big wait a minute. Let me hit view up here.
Yeah, look at view.
Oh, standard, it says.
Or what do you need to be in for the split screen, Paul?
She shouldn't have, she doesn't have it. I think the way we're set up, as long as you're spotlight, nobody has a choice but to see the split screen. Their choice is only to see you and
No.
see the screen.
I have a choice.
I have
And
a
it
works
works in side-by-side
Well, then
speaker.
what did I do?
So
In
you
my,
want to put it in speaker
The
view.
upper
Let's
right.
everybody put it in speaker view.
Right.
Wait 1 second.
or put it in, yeah.
Okay,
Work for me in speaker view.
I have standard side-by-side speaker. Would that be it?
Yeah, side by side speaker.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
There's
it.
little Jackie. I see her now. Okay.
And then there's, if you put that, so maybe it'll work now. If you put your cursor between her picture and the shared
got it right?
screen,
Yeah.
there's a line. If you if you
Yes.
push the cursor down, you can move it side to side, make the picture bigger, or her small, make the picture smaller, make her bigger, or vice versa.
Well,
Yes.
I haven't figured that out yet, but at least I know I have a small picture.
Okay.
All right, are we good now?
Yes, and why don't you shut that down, Jack? And then the other one,
Oh,
we're
there
gonna
we go.
ask everybody, or I guess actually we won't ask everybody. When we get started, I'm gonna mute everybody. And she'll go through the presentation. There'll be points either during the presentation and at the end for question, answers, and discussions, and you can just unmute yourselves then. So we're gonna give this is a first time for us too, but hopefully it's gonna work,
Our virgin voyage.
so to speak.
Did
So-
I ask where Nancy is? I need to know where Nancy is before we begin.
Nancy is right here next to me. It's just that what we're trying to do, see your hand? What
No,
we're trying to,
I mean Nancy Neff. I need to know where Nancy
She's
Neff
Oh,
is.
See, I always do that and nobody wants me. They always want you, Nancy, now.
But I know Nancy there, but I want to see where Nancy Neff is.
She's on my computer, Rosemary. She's right next to
Okay.
you.
No,
You mean
I mean, where
physically.
is she in the
Physically.
world?
Oh,
Where
in the
is she in the
country.
world?
Oh,
I'm in the Pacific Ocean, a little south of Hawaii, headed back
Ooh.
to LA.
okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that,
Several
Rosemary.
days out from television.
Yeah, I just had to know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
oh, Nancy, by the way, next Tuesday, it's been a mad week trying to get everything ready. I'm sorry I didn't answer your reply, but next Tuesday for spiritual direction.
I can't do it next Tuesday.
Oh, I thought it was at
I
to
can
the
only do it
22nd.
Following,
Right, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I
22nd.
apologize.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
the 15th is me. Next Tuesday
Okay.
is me, Jackie.
I know, but I can always put more than 2 people in. on
That's true.
Tuesday.
That's true.
So don't be a little space hog.
Unless one of you has real problems.
All right, so anyways, let's get started here. Let's get started. Just so that you understand what's going on is I'm so glad for you to all be with me. And I want you to know that we have a number of people who want to be a part of learning about this tool. And you and I are going to be basically the assistants and the helpers and the teachers for the people who are not able to come to class, but are going to watch this class on the internet. So you'll be able to look at it too from the website if you want. You'll be able to do that when you're if you want to relook at the class. But what we're doing is that's why we're spotlighting me and we're doing the teachings the way we're doing them, so that when people click on to see what the class was, they're going to see me do the teaching and the presentations, but they're going to hear your voices sharing your impressions and your thoughts and your questions. So it's really important for us together. And I'm really glad that we're together to help other people who will use this device to learn as well. So I want to welcome you tonight and thank God for those of us who have decided to do this trip with the Enneagram to find out ways that we can grow ever more deeply in our love of God and in our love for each other and ourselves. So I want to just like take 1 minute to talk about what Paul was saying the other day about, aren't I good enough? Remember when we were all talking about that? Like, why do you want to do the Enneagram? You know, why do you feel like you need to keep changing? What's this deal about transformation, right? Well, I want to just say that I think that the deal with transformation is that if you consider this, your life is always changing, right? Like if you think about what you were like 5 years ago, what circumstances you were in, what you were doing, how things were going, and you look at where you are today, 5 years forward, how different is your life and how different are your circumstances and who you are at this point in time? If we weren't even to say anything besides COVID, there's plenty of other things that have changed about your life. You know, children may have gone off to school, you know, grandchildren have grown up and are a little more independent, whatever. We have a lot of different things that continue to happen. So that's why Christ calls us to continually go towards transformation, to be more and more free, to know more and more abundant life at every stage and every experience that we're in life. And the very best way for us to know how it is to grow is to know us, to know ourselves. We need to remember that our personality, which was developed from the time we were little, is important to us, but it's not the fullness of us. It's not our full essence. Our full essence, as we're going to see as we study the Enneagram and we see you understand your personality types, the full essence is the beauty of who you are. So for an example, if your essence is the helper free of all constraints is beautiful. Or the achiever is beautiful. Those are aspects that are really beautiful to us. And it's about letting go of those things that cause us to create what I call Shempa. I don't call it Shempa, actually. Have you ever heard of Pema Chodron? She's a Buddhist teacher. And what she taught about was the idea that, well, one of the things she teaches about is called Shempa. And Shempa is the identification of the strain in you before you respond to a situation. So right before you react is where you notice your Shempa, and where it is that you can see it and then take the space to react in the most life-giving way to it. So I would say that our developed personalities and the distortions and the qualities of our personalities are that spot of Shempa. So, you know, like if a friend says something to you and your immediate reaction inside is like, you know, whatever it is. The point being is that's the little piece of your personality that Christ wants to transform into a more open and spacious place. So how do we get there? How do we get there? Well, the Enneagram talks about unconscious childhood messages that we get. So understand that we basically have a way that we see the world from the time we're born, a unique way of seeing the world. And then it gets molded by our experiences with our parents, our grandparents, with our teachers. It gets molded by experiences with our friends. From the time we're born, we are shaped. So one of the things that happens is that given our different personality types, we get messages. We will have all heard these messages that I'm going to tell you that are kind of squelching of us and cause us to create protections around ourselves. But one will probably hit you more than another because there's a unique place where you are. So imagine this, a type 1 got the message that it's not okay to make mistakes when they were little. That struck them. The type 2, it's not okay for you to have your own needs. Type 3, it's not okay for you to have your own feelings and identity. Type 4, it's not okay to be too functional or too happy. Type 5, it's not okay to be comfortable in the world. Type 6, it's not okay to trust yourself. Type 7, it's not okay to depend on anyone for anything. Type 8, it's not okay to be vulnerable or to trust anyone. And type 9, it's not okay to assert yourself. Now, when you think about it, do you remember from the time you were little, nobody does these things intentionally to us, But can you think of a time where you might have heard any of those messages and they struck you as a little child? That's part of what happens that shapes our personality to start protecting our essence so that we can't feel completely free, because we got to take care of that business. The second thing is, if we look at the reverse of that, what were the messages that we most needed and we most wanted? And we probably got some of them, but we probably didn't get all of them. And there might be one that you're going to find when I say this to you, you're going to find it was the most you would have liked to have heard the most. So a type 1 would want to hear, you are good. A type 2, you are wanted. 3, you are loved for yourself. 4, you are seen for who you are. 5, your needs are not a problem. 6, you are safe. 7, you will be taken care of. 8, you will not be betrayed. And 9, your presence matters. So these are messages that in your family, in your school, growing up with your friends, these are some of the messages that started from the beginning to have you create a kind of shell and a way of behaving around your person, around your essence, your personality. That's your personality. Now, the personality is not a bad thing. The personality is really important. But what we want to do is we want to be able to see how the personality acts in order to let more of the essence of what Christ wants us to be, who we're meant to be, made in love, who we're meant to be, so that we can give that out into the world, and not only give it to the world in general, but to give it to the ones that we love, to our children, to our grandchildren, to our friends, to our neighbors, to ourselves. So that's why you and I are working on this. This is why I'm intentional about teaching it to you, because I want you to grow in this knowledge so that you can become even more free and more loving and more compassionate. And as you understand, not just how it hits you, but you begin to understand how other people are, you understand how to love them better because you understand the way they see the world better. So that's what we're about. And I thank God that we're together to do this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a trip around the Enneagram, understand how it's designed, understand how the aspects of it work. And then we're going to finish the night with just a thumbnail sketch of each one of the personality types. And then I want to invite you, if you haven't already taken your test, to take your test with the knowledge that we have, and then see how that fits. And what we're going to start next week, from next week on, we'll be taking one personality type each week and exploring them in depth and seeing what they're about and how they express themselves in the world, and what are things that can help them to grow, and what are gifts that they bring. So that's what we're going to be about tonight. So
I'm going to, Jack, to start off, I'm going to mute everybody. And when I
Okay.
mute everybody, you're going to get muted too. So you're going to unmute yourself, I think. So you need to unmute yourself.
I wish you could do that to your wife.
there you go. Okay. So now I am going to share our first screen. We got a lot of screens to look at tonight. It's gonna be fun. So we want to begin with this screen. Oh, no, wait a minute. This screen. All right, we're going to begin with this screen. All right, here we go. So
Do we need to take notes, Professor Sheldon?
no, you do not need to take notes, because everything's going to be online. If you want to know more, if you want to relook at it, you can always just go back online and look at it.
Excellent, thank you.
So to begin with, this is the Enneagram is a circle with 9 points in the circumference, and it are divided. And you'll notice in the inside that the circle is divided into a triangle. See the triangle from the 9 to the 6 to the 3? And then it's a 6-point design to the other numbers. So there's 2 sets of numbers. So the Enneagram has what we call arrows in it. And the arrows are the direction in which you go to the positive side of a personality, of the other personality, when you're relaxed, And when you're in stress, you go to the negative side of an opposite personality. So let me show you what that looks like in another screen. Give me one moment here. I'm going to share a new screen with you to show you what I mean by that. Here we go. So now, when you saw the arrows back there,
We're not seeing anything on your shared screen now.
are you seeing it now?
Seeing it now.
All right, that's how this is going to work. I'm going to shift from screens. So what we're talking about when we look at that circle that we were looking at the arrows, how they went. Each point in the Enneagram connects to 2 points, and these 2 points are called your arrows. When you relax, you take on the positive qualities of the numbers that connects to you in this order. So if your personality is a 1 and you're relaxed, you take on the positive side of a 7. The 7 takes on the positive side of the 5. The 5 takes on the positive 8. See how that works? 8 takes on the positive 2. 2 takes on the positive 4. 4 takes on the positive 1. That's in the 6-point design. In the triangle, the 3 takes on the positive of the 6. The 6 takes on 9, and the 9 takes on the 3. Now, so that's the movement integration. That's when we're feeling good. These are the senses that you'll feel in you. And so this is kind of what they look like. So if you're a 1 and you might be kind of angry and critical when you're frustrated, and when you become more spontaneous and joyful, that's like a healthy 7. If you're a 2, on your dark side, you can be prideful and self-deceptive. But as you become more self-nurturing and emotionally aware, you take on the healthy aspects of the number 4 personality. The number 3, which can be in its darkest side, vain and deceitful, becomes more cooperative and committed to others, like healthy 6s. Now remember, these are all broad spectrum scales. Nobody's all dark and nefarious, and nobody's all wonderful and cheery, but this is a way of understanding the movement to growth. So the 4, who can be envious and emotionally turbulent, becomes more objective and principled when they take on the healthy qualities of the 1. The 5, which can be avaricious and detached, can become more self-confident and decisive, like a healthy 8. The 6, which can be fearful and pessimistic, when they become more relaxed, they become optimistics. They take on the healthy side of the 9. The 7, which can be gluttonous and want all kinds of feed, and can be scattered, becomes more focused and profound, like a healthy 5. And the 8, which can be lustful and controlling, becomes more open-hearted and caring, like a healthy 2. And the 9, which can be slothful and self-neglecting, at its worst, can become self-developing and energetic, like a healthy 3. So these are the ideas of where you can go from the more challenged side and grow into a more expansive and generous side, and that's the movement of the arrows from that direction. Does anybody have anything they want to say about this? Anything you notice or that you've noticed? Maybe I've been angry and I'm not so angry now. I'm more spontaneous, joyful, because we grow as we mature. We don't need the Enneagram to help us grow. We grow just because we grow. We can either grow to the more negative side or the more positive side of ourselves. Have you noticed any of this in yourself or in others? What do you think?
I'm just wondering, Jack, why is when you're listing the characteristics of the different types, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're only talking about the bad features of it, and that the bad features are becoming more good. Is that the intent?
That is the intent, and this is from Don Richard Rizzo, who I really like a lot. And what he's doing with the integration and disintegration arrows is he's taking the most intense experience of the personality. So he's going, all right, so if you're a 1, at your darkest, most intense, most immature, least developed self, you can be very angry and critical. In healing, as you go through life, you move to be more spontaneous. You let go of that anger. You're not so anxious anymore, and you become more joyful. And that's the healthy side of a 7. So in each case, when they're discussing the arrows, in other words, we're talking just about the way the image in the tool works right now. And so the image, we're looking at the dramatic side of the tool. There's a lot of variation in it, but tonight we're just looking at the aspect of how it's designed, how the teachers over the many years have used it to understand how people can grow and how people can heal. So in what I'm showing you right now is I just want to show you the basic design that's used as we go forward to understand personalities. Does that make sense?
Jackie, this is Rosemary. I have done this when I was in my 50s or 60s. I did this, and I was a very 2. I was a 2. So if I would become healthy if I went to 4, and that's when I could write poetry. Or if I were in my shadow side, I would go to 8 apparently and become a bully. So a number 2, I was, and now that I'm my age, I took the test again. I'm completely different. So,
Well, I think
but I thought it might be helpful to say, learning when I was a complete 2, that going to 4 made me healthy, and then going to 8 was when I was in my bad place. So yeah, as a 2, I could be very nurturing to people, but if I were in my really awful state, I could be a bully and be very manipulative and pushy. And 2s can really be, come across pretty hard. Like you could be the mom, makes everyone feel guilty if you were in a bad place. But if you're very nurturing, you can also help people. So it was that helped me a lot back in the day to know that.
Yeah, and thank you, Rosemary. That's really helpful for people to understand that. This idea of being able to understand how personalities move about and how it helps us to recognize that we have every single aspect of every single personality in us, that the whole is in us. But we tend, because of the experience from our early childhood and moving forward, like I was talking about last week, we create what we call an empirical ego. In other words, we learn to address life according to our experiences, not according to reality. So from the time we're little, when we hear messages and when we journey, we reinforce those negative sides in ourselves, and we want to let them go. And so what you're talking about is being a 2 is the message to begin with was, it's not okay for you to take care of your own needs. So
my message was, you've always taken care of us. You've always been a helper.
Right, which means which the message comes out, it means you tell yourself, when somebody says you always take care of everybody, then you have to not take care of your own needs, so you can be sure you keep taking care of everybody else's needs.
Right.
So this is, does anybody else have anything else they want to share about their experience of any of this?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of look at this kind of stuff as not so much good and bad. It's all these traits are inside of us. So the first one was angry. Anger is not always that's perfectly normal to be angry sometimes and fearful sometimes. I look at these things not so much as good and bad attributes, but balanced or unbalanced. And for me, to look at it that way is much more helpful. I don't have to think if I get angry with something. If I'm balanced, I'm going to deal with that angry in a certain way. If I'm imbalanced, I'm going to respond to that anger in a very unbalanced way, which might not come out so good. It's just like all of them.
Yeah, I think
That's
that's a
all I
good
got.
point, Andy. I think that's a good point. And I think the thing about the Enneagram is it's not so much, I want to say it's not so much about bad or good. It's not a duality like that. It's more like immature and mature, more free and less free. You see what I mean? So what inhibits us, what inhibits those around us from being free to give love the way we want to, and what doesn't. So we're going to go now and look at the disintegrative side. Now you're going to really love it. If you like that one, wait till you see this one. All right. So when you're under stress, okay, when you're under stress, you reverse your directions and take on the negative qualities of the personality type on the other side. So the 1 takes on the challenge side, the stress side of the 4, the 4, the 2, the 2, the 8, the 5, the 7, the 7, the 1. And in the triangle, the 3 takes on the 9, the 9 takes on the 6, and the 6 takes on the 3. So what that looks like, what can play out like is this. Okay, so the methodical 1s suddenly become moody and irrational at 4. The needy 2s suddenly become aggressive and dominating. The driven 3s suddenly become disengaged and apathetic at 9. The aloof 4s suddenly become over-involved and clinging at 2. The detached 5s suddenly become hyperactive and scattered at 7. The dutiful 6s suddenly become competitive and arrogant at 3. The scattered 7s suddenly become perfectionistic and critical at 1. The self-confident 8 suddenly becomes secretive and fearful at 5. And the complacent 9 suddenly become anxious and worried at 6. Now, what I want you to think about when you hear these things, the way they're described, is imagine times in your life when you have been really stressed and in pain. And what happens when you're in that place? That's what this is talking about. It's talking about at times when you feel the most pain. And we all know that those happen. We all know that life can be a struggle. We go through high points, we go through low points, we go through a lot in between. But when we're suffering, I want to describe it as when we're suffering, these can be the way we start to react, given our personality. And the important thing to understand about it being the way that we react is it's not a signpost that you're bad or you're doing something wrong. It's more a signpost that you need to take care of yourself. This isn't about, oh, look how terrible you are. This is about if you're feeling moody and irrational, if you all of a sudden notice you're there, you have to say to yourself, okay, what do I need to do? What break do I need? What do I need to do to take care of myself? Something's stressing me out so hard that it's making me react in a way that is just, it's just destructive for me, right? Haven't we all been there? And we've been there and we'll be there again because we're human and that's part of the human experience. So the more we understand how we get when we're in pain, the more we can read that in ourselves before it gets too far and take better care of ourselves. So, I can say for myself as an 8, as a self-confident 8, that for sure, I can notice when I become more secretive. I can give you like a little illustration. So I've been working on this class and I've been trying to get this class completed to teach you tonight. And because I had prepared to do this class. I had prepared before David died. I had been preparing to do this class. I had expected to do a lot of research and put my materials together way before now. Well, it just so happened that Dave died and everything exploded, so I wasn't able to get to work on it. What I wanted to do, what I found myself wanting to do and stress, was to tell a different story about why I couldn't go do other things, why I needed to leave the vestry meeting today, why I needed to not go to the soup kitchen for a couple more weeks when I really want to work there. Secretive. I wanted to tell a story, secretive story about why I couldn't do it, instead of just saying, I'm sorry, I have a class that's really important I'm trying to prepare for, and I haven't been able to prepare for it in time. So I need to take this time off. Do you see what I'm saying? So out of stress, I was willing to try to come up with some story about why, what I was doing, as opposed to just opening up and saying, you know, I need more time. I had to take care of myself. I had to be honest and be confident that it's okay that I can't get all the work done. It's okay. I'm all right with that. It doesn't make me less competent or confident because I need to take more time because of what's happened to me to get the class ready. Do you see what I'm saying about that now? Does that make sense? Can you see in yourselves any of these activities that you might have gone into when you've been really stressed, when life has put a pressure on you? So we're going to move on from here now to go on to the next place. So remember that what we're doing is we're simply looking at the shape of the Enneagram right now, because we're going to delve into these things differently as we go along. But right now, we're just working on the shape. So the shape is designed to understand these traits in our personality. So the peacemaker, but recognize, see these names? Imagine these names without any stress and at their highest level of performance, how much each one of these names is a gift to the world.
What happened to the questioner at number 6?
The questioner is that this is, we're using the Don Richard Rizzo's model. So he uses the name loyalist instead. So this time we're just using his identifier names as we're teaching from there. The questioner is still the questioner. It's still there. He's just using a different model and description of using a different name for it.
Obviously, I didn't read any of this stuff yet.
Pardon me?
Obviously, I haven't read any of this stuff yet.
No, I'm really pretty much I'm just kind of really introducing you to a lot of it now, but I'm using a particular person's teaching. So we're going to use their wording all the way through, but everything you've ever heard from any other wording is pretty much the same. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So moving on from there, the next thing I want you to see is I want you to see wings. So this is just an idea of understanding. Here's our numbers again. And this is the Rizzo Hudson. This is the people we're using the study from. The next thing that the Enneagram talks to us about is wings. So in other words, on each side of your personality style, there will be a wing. And those wings can influence you. So your personality, not like I think I said earlier, no one is a pure number for the most part. First thing I want to say two things. Number one, the Enneagram uses numbers because they are neutral. They're not meant to be a describer. Everybody is just as good. No personality is better than another. And even when it comes to numbers, if you're a 9, instead of a 1. It doesn't make you better because you're a 9 or better because you're a 1. It's just a number. It's just a way of marking that personality trait. So that's really one of the labors in this type of understanding of personality, is that every one of our personalities is a gift, and it's not about wanting another personality. It's about coming to love who you are. So if you look at what we're talking about here, let's just take the 9 for an example. The nine has an 8 wing. If the 9 that's influenced by the 8 wing is a comfort seeker, but the 9 that is influenced by the 1 wing is a dreamer. 2 different sides to it. The 1, if the 1 influenced by the 9 is the idealist, the 1 influenced by the 2 is the advocate. See how this works? So that it changes in a way the scope of your expression depending on which wing influences you more. So as we listen to the different personality types, it's going to help you understand how you're influenced and what it means to you in your expression in the world. So you can see these as they go around. The two, if it's influenced by the 1, becomes a servant. The 2 that's got more influence of a 3 becomes a host or a hostess. The 3 influenced by the 2 is a star. The 3 by the 4 is the professional. The 4 by the 3 is an aristocrat. The 4 by the 5 is a bohemian. Can you feel the shifts? The 5 influenced by the 4 is an iconoclast, and by the 6 becomes a problem solver. The 6 influenced by the 5 becomes a defender. The 6 influenced by the 7 becomes a buddy. The 7 influenced by the 6 becomes an entertainer. The 7 by the 8 is a realist. The 8 by the 7 is a maverick. The 8 by the 9 is the bear. So that image of wings builds out to another expression that I want to show you. So here's the blends. Here's some blends to look at. Can you see that all right? So now the thing that's interesting is that I like the way that they talk about this. This is what we're talking about in development of personality. When they're talking to us about the wings and they're talking about personalities and they're talking about our growth, we can they like to call it immature, right? That makes sense. Not quite developed, not really developed yet, or normal or mature. So those are the stages of our growth, right? So when you look at what happens, you can see the kind of underlying expression that happens at each one of these levels. So a 1 with the wing of a 9 as an immature expression is intolerant, and a normal expression is impersonal, and a mature is just. The 1 with the wing of a 2 is hypocritical, controlling, and ultimately compassionate. The 2 with a wing of a 1 is judgmental. Do any of these strike you? Are you noticing any of these things about yourself? Because remember this, are we always acting at our most mature self? No. Are we mostly chugging along kind of normal? Yeah. How often are we actually coming at our mature self? I'd like to come at my mature self a lot more frequently than I do. I'm glad I have it in me. And that's what we strive for, but it doesn't mean we're always there. So the 2 with the 1 wing becomes judgmental, can be a judgmental at their most immature moment, ambitious at their, and think about it, these things are not negative, right? Like judgmental at an immature moment. Yes, of course, that's not good. It doesn't feel good. But at a normal basis, is there anything wrong with being ambitious? No. That's what I want you to understand about these words that are being used. They're not being used to be negative. They're just being used to have you sense how you might look at the world at different times in different ways. So the 2 with the 1 is judgmental, ambitious, or encouraging. With the 3, it could be calculating, a conformist, or friendly. The wing, the 3 with a 2 wing can be malicious when they're immature, attractive when they're just in their regular state, and sensitive when they're mature. The wing with the 4 can be pretentious, demanding, or intuitive. Just notice if any of these things fit you. I'm not going to read them all out loud because you can read them yourself. So you're reading them all right? Can you see them? Are you ready for me to move? So the 6, we can see how this all goes. 6, 7, these are all things we're going to learn about ourselves. But look at these, look what happens with maturity. Just, encouraging, sensitive, winning, inspired, expert, happy, magnanimous, gentle, and strong, right? Compassionate, friendly, intuitive, creative, diligent, warm-hearted, strong leadership, kind, pure. Those are all expressions within us, right? And we all carry all those expressions. But what you look at with these is you look at which ones are most common to you. So that's what that we can begin to see that there's a real complexity to our expression, given these points of our wings and how they play out within us. So with that being said,
one thing that's striking me is no matter what personality type we are, if we act mature, it's always going to be positive. And when we're immature, it's always going to be negative.
And like that's a good observation, Paul. And how many people recognize that to be reality in their lives? Isn't it true that when you're acting immature, you suffer the most? And when you're acting mature, you enjoy life the most. Good observation, Paul. Okay. So now, the next thing that I want to talk to you about is going to be our centers. Let's see if I can find what I'm looking for here. Where was it? I'm trying to find my right one. Here we go. All right, here we go. So now, these are what are called our centers, okay? So each, it's divided into 3 different personalities, and basically when you see the 3, the 8, the 9, and the 1, their biggest issue to deal with at the level of development is anger. And the 2 and the 3 and the 4 have to deal with shame. And the 7 and the 6 and the 5 are fear-based. So we have anger-based, shame-based, and fear-based in the expressions of ourselves. So we all have anger, fear, and shame, right? But these are the prominent feelings that come up in these personalities. And you see the blue on the side that says externalized, repressed, and internalized. So the 8 usually externalizes their anger. And I have to say that that's always been true for me. One of the ways that they talk about 8s, because I'm an 8, and how they work with their anger is they say 8s are most prone to have potty mouths. The most prone to burst out swearing in any situation. And that's because that's the valve that we use for anger. But the 8 usually has that. The 9 feels anger, but represses it and tries to hold it down. But the 1 actually internalizes it, so it can become a really tight rage inside them. So these different, these you're going to notice what do you experience most when you're upset? What do you experience? What do you tend to experience more? Are you more apt to express, feel anger, shame, or fear?
What's the
Now,
big difference between repressed and internalized? I would think that repressed, any of these things would be kind of like internalized, so I'm kind of not
well,
understanding that.
the difference between repressed and internalized would be repressed is to push it away from you. Internalized is to push it down in you. See that difference?
Yep,
One keeps it burning inside you, the other one tries to push it away from you. So the repressed pushes it away while the internalized puts it.
In other words, you try to ignore it. The repress, you try to ignore it.
Yeah, and repression you're trying to ignore, whereas in internalizing you're trying not to say it. You're trying not to let it out, but it's still in you.
when you repress emotions, don't they tend to internalize?
Well, yes, but there's a difference between repressing and pushing aside and in internalizing. I mean, any one of these eventually, they internalize on all of us, but in other words, there's like, let me put it this way. Okay, so if you have anger and you're repressing your anger, you'll say it's everybody else's fault because you're angry. You'll figure out why it's everybody else's fault that you're angry. But if you're internalizing the anger, you're angry at yourself.
Okay,
Imagine repression is always trying to push it off on somebody else, some situation, whatever, whereas internalization is you're turning it against yourself. So here's another way to look at the centers that I think is very helpful. Imagine your body and imagine where you feel things. Okay. So for an example, here's another way of looking at the centers, right? So finding your center is the key to finding your type. Each center is made up of 3 adjacent types corresponding to the 3 centers of the body: the heart, the head, and the gut. So if your center is the heart or feeling center, you're concerned about image, and the helper is interested in people and nurturing, and they want to present a loving image. The achievers like to be seen in good light according to socially agreed upon norms. And the romantics have strong needs to express themselves and to be seen as original. And one of the ways that you can think of the heart is like, imagine when you're upset, what bothers you the most. 2s feel it in their hearts. 2s and 3s, they feel it in, matter of fact, to tell you the truth, 3s are typically the people that end up in cardiac care units. Because they're overachievers. And I remember when I was working as a chaplain in the hospital, going up on the cardiac care units and seeing the number of people who had this idea of their heart was hurt because they were such overachievers and they had to keep going and they had to keep doing, and trying to recognize how much that was a matter, a real situation for them. Now, the next one is head or thinking centers, and these people actually typically get headaches. So observers or 5s rely on their own resources and find safety and knowledge. Questioners, this group uses questioners as opposed to loyalists, Andy. They seek relief from fear through the permission and approval of authority figures or through rebellion against authority. And adventurers are active and optimistic. They shun unpleasant emotions. So they're fear-based. They want to stay away from it. So they tend to either feel confused in their heads or get headaches easily. So you can actually feel it in yourself if that's your center. And then finally, there's the gut center, and that's the anger. And asserters or 8s present a strong image and are not afraid to express their anger. Peacemakers are agreeable, accommodating, and can often be out of touch with their anger. And perfectionist ones see anger as a character flaw and try to hold it back. They follow standards of behavior closely or try to better the world. So does any of this, how does any of this strike any of you? Let me come up here first and look at center 3. How did this first center, the heart and feeling center, has anybody had any experience like this?
Well, I think we can experience any of these things from time to time. I don't think that we're narrowed to a. I mean, I think I'm probably a solid 6, but I also can see a lot of my attributes in these others, all 9 of them. So I can see me reacting in certain ways to all of these in the same way.
And that is really an important thing to say, that everyone has all aspects within them in the Enneagram. We all have every single personality trait. The point is which one do we lean towards?
But I'm a solid questioner, and I'm affected very deeply by my wings. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Does anybody want to say anything about this display? So now we see we have our numbers, we have our arrows, we have our centers, right? And these are all these all come into play with our personality, understanding our personalities. So coming back here to where we were, that is all of the shape of the Enneagram for us to know. That's the design. That's the complete design that I wanted to explain to you tonight. So we have our circle with our connections, and the connections indicate where we move in integration and where we move in disintegration. And we have our wings that show us how we're influenced, and we have our centers of anger, fear, and shame, and how they move through our being in these areas. Any questions about this so far? Or comments?
Isn't part of this process to figure out where we are and then decide if we're satisfied being there and where we want to be, as opposed to where we are? Knowing where I am is probably less important than, or maybe not less important, but probably the more important is knowing what I want to be as opposed to what I am.
Yeah, the thing about, imagine it this way. What in the Shema, it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And then Jesus added, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, in order for us to love ourselves, this is a great tool in order for us to love ourselves and then love our neighbors. Because when we understand who we are and we have compassion for ourselves and we help ourselves grow to be stronger in our best gifts and our best way of expressing ourselves in the world, and we're able to be our own healers by being able to see where it is we're caught up and where we suffer, when we're able to understand that in ourselves and we do this and we use this tool, guess what? We also understand others better. The more we can understand ourselves, the more we can understand others. And then we can bring more compassion and mercy into the world because we have understood ourselves. And we also then can understand that all of the personality traits are in us, and all of us struggle and all of us shine. And just what you're saying, Paul, the important thing is knowing who you are, not so much because you want to get rid of something terrible, but in order to set yourself free to let your pure essence shine forth ever more beautifully. And as we do it, you then can look at your grandchildren, and you can look at your children, and you can look at your wives and your friends and your husbands and your lovers, and you can love them even better because you understand them better as well. And your community members. So that's what this effort's all about, is to learn to do this. Does that all, how do you feel about that? Does that make sense? Why we would take the time to learn all of these things? Now that we know the complicated system itself, I want to talk to you. I want to share with you a simple thumbnail sketch of our of the personality styles. Nancy, did you want to say something?
No.
Yeah, I just want to make sure
But
that
Shirley-
when Paul says where we want to be, that he's not thinking in terms of a number, that no one number is better than any other, and whatever number you are doesn't mean that you want to pick another number to become. It's maturity or immaturity within the aspects of the numbers that you are. Is that fair to say?
Actually, I kind of like that you said that, and I guess really what it says, no matter what number you are, what we want to be striving through is to be mature at that number. Because no matter what, it's a
Right.
mature thing, then you all had positive outcomes no matter which way you went.
Right.
Yes, yes. You agree, Jackie?
Yes, I do agree with that. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Right? So a truly balanced person would be totally divided up into all 9 of them, right? But being human, we're pretty much relegated to where we're at.
Well, I think I'd say it a little different. I think that I'd say a truly mature person understands their personal unique expression in the world and completely appreciates the other expressions, understanding that you're a part of the whole thing, but you bring your own unique gift and expression into the world. You have everything in you, but what I want you to know, what this work is to know what your best gift is that you bring into the world, and then grow in maturity to express that and bring that unique brand of your own unique love into the world, the way that you were designed and the way that you've experienced life. So it's not so much that you become mature and you have you're just one big accumulation of all these things at once. You still stay who you are. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to share with you, I've made little thumbnail sketches here of each one of these types and see how they fit for you for tonight, okay? So the type 1, let's talk about this for a minute. The type 1, the reformer, the principled idealistic type. 1s are ethical and conscientious with a strong sense of right and wrong. They are teachers and crusaders, always striving to improve things, but afraid of making mistakes. Well organized, orderly, and fastidious, they try to maintain high standards, but can slip into being critical and perfectionistic. They typically have problems with repressed anger and impatience. At their best, healthy ones are wise, discerning, realistic, and noble, as well as morally heroic. Anybody know any ones, or anyone feel like they can feel some of that strength in their personality?
Oh yeah, Jack, I'm a solid 6, but I'm still principled and idealistic as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I hope at my best I'm wise, discerning, realistic, and noble. I'm morally heroic, but I'm not a type 1. That's for sure.
Yeah. So here we go. Let's try type 2. See if any of these qualities strike somebody else as a type 2, kind of like, oh yeah, I could see where that might be my center. The type 2 is the helper, the caring interpersonal type. 2s are empathetic, sincere, and warm-hearted. They are friendly, generous, and self-sacrificing, but they can also be sentimental, flattering, and people-pleasing. They are driven to be close to others. They often do things for others in order to be needed. They typically have problems taking care of themselves and acknowledging their own needs. At their best, healthy twos are unselfish and altruistic and have unconditional love for themselves and others. Does that sound like anybody?
Yeah, I know that I was a 2 with a 3 wing, which made me a hostess, and I did give a lot of parties. But now that I'm so much older, I have changed. I'm also a 2, but I'm also a 7 and a 9. So, wow.
There you go.
You can't, I go, oh, I had a fun being a 2 hostess, but now I can move on to something else.
There you go. So let's look at a number 3 now. The 3, the achiever, the adaptable, success-oriented type. 3s are self-assured, attractive, and charming, ambitious, competitive, and energetic. They can also be status conscious and highly driven for personal advancement. 3s are often concerned about their image and what others think of them. They typically have problems with workaholism and competitiveness. At their best, healthy 3s are self-accepting, authentic, and everything in them seems to be and everything they seem to be role models to inspire others.
Jackie,
Yep.
it's after 7 and I have to go too. But I have a basic question. I did the questionnaire, and on the last page, it gives your 3 highest personality scores. So when you're talking about type 4 or type 5, if that's one of your 3 highest personality scores, that's attributes for, those are attributes that apply to you.
They should, yeah.
So, but you keep talking like it's only one number is all this presented makes it seem like there's only one number. Whereas I have 3 numbers that ask for 3 highest scores.
But I mean, your 3, what's your highest score of all?
The highest score was a 9.
All right, so then that would be the number you would start with looking at when we're listening. You're going to look at that as a high possibility that that's your personality type. Remember, there's great diversion within each personality type, so it's not just like an act. And what I'm trying to teach you in today and yet last week's class is just the idea that it's expansive for us to determine who we are and what that means for us. And if you look at the 9, let's look at the 9 for a minute and see how that sounds to you.
So when you list it as type 9, you're talking about the highest score.
Right. If your score was the highest, if you check the most boxes on a 9, see if any of this works for you. Easygoing, self-effacing type. 9s are accepting, trusting, and stable. They are good-natured, kind-hearted, easygoing, and supportive, but can also be too willing to go along with others to keep the peace. They want everything to be without conflict and can tend to be complacent and minimize anything upsetting. They typically have problems with passivity and stubbornness. At their best, healthy 9s are indomitable and all-embracing. They are able to bring people together and heal conflicts. Does any of that sound like the way you are?
Some of it.
Right. Right. This is only a thumbnail sketch, but that's what we're trying to do. How about maybe this is a better way to go because we are running late here. Does anybody have a high score that they know of that they'd like me to read to see if the thumbnail kind of fits you?
6.
All right, Andy says 6. So 6 is the committed, security-oriented type. 6s are reliable, hardworking, and responsible, but they can also be defensive, evasive, and highly anxious, running on stress while complaining about it. They are often cautious and indecisive, but can also be reactive, defiant, and rebellious. They typically have problems with self-doubt and suspicion. At their best, healthy 6s are internally stable, self-confident, and self-reliant, courageously supporting the weak and the powerless.
Bingo.
Anybody else have a number they want to hear? No, all good?
Jackie, I have a question about the scoring,
Yeah.
because when I first started looking into this, I was getting two types kept coming up.
Mhm.
And on the test that you handed out, I have a tie. And when I try retaking the tests with thinking of myself as a 25-year-old, or trying to limit it to only those things that are absolutely true, they keep coming up. One will be 1 point more than the other, and they keep flipping back and forth. What do you suggest in that case?
Well, I think as we go through the class, what's going to happen is we're going to go in detail. Like next week, we're going to start with personality type 1. And I'm going to bring up a lot of details about the personality type 1 so you can really understand the scope of it. So the point is that the only person who can ever determine what your personality type is you. It has to be by your intent, your intuition, and where you decide to sit with it. So if you have 2 that you're struggling with like that, essentially it's going to come down to what you intuit as the one that feels like it fits you the best.
Okay.
So the scoring, that's why we're going to go through each one individually, and that's why I'm showing you the thumbnail right now, because it's not so easy to actually identify your type. But once you do, sometimes you can identify your type and you start working with it for a while and doing things to help yourself and support yourself, and then you find out that maybe you're actually more of another. Like I lean between 7 and 8 all the time. Those are my 2 strongest ones. They're 7 and 8, and I move back and forth, but they're really close. So it may be that you just have a personality that's super close with both elements in it. It's hard to say. We'll have to look. But the reason we do the 3 highest scores is because depending on what those 3 highest scores, a lot of times what ends up being is that you're 1 and the other scores on the other sides are your 2 wings.
Yeah,
So-
these are 2 totally different.
So
It's
we
a
need
1
to,
versus a 5.
it's a 1 and a 5.
So it's
Yep.
not a wing.
Yep. So while we're working on these, when we get to those when we get to each one on the day we're doing them, we'll talk about these ideas about how we can discern a little bit better about who we are so that we can use the tools. Because ultimately the thing that we're going to be doing is looking at tools for helping ourselves be able to see the world and to relax into the world where we're stressed in better ways, and also how to use the best gifts we have and increase the way that we can present them in the world. So that's what that's what we'll be doing. So what I can do with this though, since we're running late, is if you want, I can just email you the pieces that I've done, and you can examine them over the week and see how they hit you, because I know it's a lot of material. The first 2 weeks are a lot of material because I'm trying to help you understand the design and the movement, so that when we get talking about each personality, you already have this baseline in to understand when we begin to talk about the personality styles. So would you like me to send you the hard copies of these in your email so you can read them over on your own? I know I felt this teaching, I felt preparing for this was going to be a lot of information to try to go over in the first 2 classes. But basically, I want to give you the baseline so we can get into the personality, so we can understand the personalities. Okay?
It would be useful to have them, yes.
Okay, so I will send these off. I'll get them sent off to you tomorrow. I'll get them all sent off to you so you'll have the hard copies. All right? Is there anything else anybody wants to say before we go tonight? We're all set then? So, take a nice deep breath. We've taken a ride around the Enneagram tonight. Holy mackerel. Yikes. And next week, I promise you, next week will be a little more settled down as we just look at the one personality and see how that fits into all the stuff we've just taken in. All right. Good night and God bless you, darlings.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.